Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
But Brandon, we're going to move on and make our predictions for the second week of March Madness. And if you're joining us on YouTube, yet again, Second Chance Tournament Group down below in the description. Go join it right now, especially if your bracket was busted by, like, everyone except for mine. Mine and Brandon's, I think, are the only ones from MVP that's not busted. And Mark, who's in last place, he's still got South Carolina, one of his championship teams in the tournament. So let's go with the MVP crew. But Brandon, we're going to go through, make our second chance predictions. We're going to start in the East region. And here's the games you got. You got number 8 Wisconsin, number 4 Florida, number 3 Baylor, number 7 South Carolina. Who you got?
Well, I'll start with the Baylor-South Carolina game, and I'm going to go with South Carolina here because they're riding a high. They have never in school history won back-to-back tournament games. They've now done it. And I think that just the way they played against Duke, they look like such a complete team. They didn't lose their cool. They didn't lose their composure. This is a team that's ready for a Baylor team that has actually played well in the tournament. But I think that Baylor's run comes to an end because you got to have that Cinderella, and South Carolina might be it.
Also, I forgot to thank you for talking me into picking the New Mexico State Aggies. I want to thank you for that because that's who I originally had picked to beat Baylor in the first round. I forgot to thank you for that in the first segment.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You talked me into it.
I also picked them. But hey, they stuck around for a little bit until the end.
What about Scotty and Florida?
Wisconsin, Florida, I think this is a tough one. Wisconsin, they played so well. They played so well against Villanova, and they truly have two of the best big men in Nigel Hayes, and then with Ethan Happ down low. Both of those guys showed up, played really, really well, and it would be hard if you just said Wisconsin. I'd be like, oh man, Wisconsin. But then you say Florida. I like Florida. I've liked them coming into the tournament. I think that they're a pretty dangerous team. The way that they played defense against Virginia, a team that is usually known for being the one to play defense against their opponent. I got to take Florida in this one. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a low-scoring game, but I take Florida to win this one, probably about 5.
And before you make your Elite 8 prediction, usually I would wait for you to do that and then give you mine, but just because this is a rare occasion, ditto. We picked the same games. We picked the same winners in the East. I got Florida. I got South Carolina as well. So we both have an Elite 8 of number 4 Florida, number 7 South Carolina, an SEC showdown in the East. Who you got? The Gamecocks or the Chomping Gators?
You know, this one's tough. I think that because these teams know each other so well, because they've played each other, I'm going to have to go with Florida. And I think that I would give Florida the edge because these two teams, both from the SEC, and I just have to go with Florida, played better in the regular season. Again, because they know each other so well, I give the edge to Florida.
You're really reading my mind, aren't you? Or we just are seeing the same page here for the East region because I got Florida as well. Like Florida, it's one of those tricky things. Is it the Virginia game they played so well or Virginia played so bad? And for me, I look at it as I like this Florida team. They are on a little bit of what I would normally say is a rolly roll, Brandon, and they are going to continue that roll in the second weekend. You look at what they've done in their previous matchups this season. February 21st at home, Florida getting the win 81-66. On the road, though, South Carolina, who was ranked at the time at 24, beat a Florida team 68-66. So it's all going to depend on, because it's on a neutral court, do the Gamecocks still show up and play? But both these teams kind of hitting their stride at the right time. I just like the Gators to move on as well. So both of us have the same exact East region with Florida into the Final Four. Let's move down to the West. Who's going to meet Florida in the Final Four? We've got the Zags and West Virginia. We've got the Musketeers and the Wildcats. Who you got? Let's start Zaga and West Virginia.
Well, West Virginia, they shocked me. I did not think that they were going to beat Notre Dame.
I didn't either.
And if we wanted to look at a biggest disappointment to this point, it would be Notre Dame for me. But I think that West Virginia showed that they can clearly shoot the basketball well. But on the other side, Gonzaga, they still, and I'm with Clark Kellogg on this, they are the most complete team and the most balanced team, I think, in this tournament with bigs down low, with perimeter presence, and with being able to play defense. And you talked about it in the last segment, head coaching. Mark Few is one of the best head coaches out there. I got to go Zags.
How about Musketeers and Wildcats? Xavier, Arizona.
See, this is a pretty good one because Xavier is on a roll right now. They're playing really well, but Arizona also shows that some resiliency. I mean, that game that they played against St. Mary's wasn't close. Well, I mean, wasn't a blowout. It was close.
And the one thing that I didn't mention in the first segment that I wanted to was we were about this close to having. We talked. How many people in the comment section talked so much shit about Gonzaga, where it's like, well, what conference do they play in? It's only the WCC. We almost had 2 WCC teams in the Sweet 16. What's that saying about that conference? Looking at UACC, who had the most bids and are down to 1. But what do you got? Xavier, Arizona. I digress, Brandon.
Sean Miller is a very good coach, and I think that in this game, he's going to need about 3 white shirts because he's going to sweat through the first 2. It's going to be that good of a game, but I think that Arizona is able to come out on top.
Well, you know what? I will take you. I have the Zags as well, so we're both agreeing in that game. I will take your Sean Miller, and I will raise you a Chris Mack, another great head coach. I'm going with the Musketeers to beat the Wildcats, going against my regular bracket. My regular bracket, I've got the Bulldogs and the Wildcats in the Elite 8. With the Bulldogs moving on, I have a slight difference here in the second chance bracket. I'm going Zags versus the Musketeers, with the Zags moving on to meet Florida in the Final Four. Who do you got, though? Because you got the Wildcats and you got the Zags.
It's a tough game. Alonzo Trier, very, very good for Arizona. And then you have to look at the other side too, though. I mean, those big guys down low,
Collins.
I mean, oh my gosh. I think that those guys being down there, having that presence down low, and then Nigel Williams,
Goss, you got Matthews
on the
out
perimeter.
There.
And what I will say is that one thing that you have mentioned multiple times, and something that I think that they are the best at, is transition. Gonzaga is the best transition team in all of college basketball. And you can tell me I'm wrong, but that's who I think is the best, and certainly in this tournament. I think Gonzaga is able to score points in transition. Arizona's not going to be able to run with them there. And I think that Gonzaga is able to get the win over Arizona. It's a huge win.
Well, and the one thing I will say that will be a different kind of play-in style for Arizona is when they played St. Mary's, they would miss a shot. St. Mary's would come down. St. Mary's offense was very half-court base. Let's run shot clock. Boom. Then let's get it in. There were a few where they got into the lane, they scored quickly, but for the majority, the Gales were using shot clock. The Zags aren't going to do that. If you have a poor shooting night against them, Arizona, they are going to take that miss, boom, and immediately look to push down the court, and that could be bad for the Wildcats. If that happens, I've got Xavier, though.
You've got Xavier over Gonzaga?
No, I've got Xavier over Arizona. So I don't have that Arizona-Zaga game.
But you got Gonzaga winning, obviously.
So we both have Florida and the Bulldogs in the Final Four.
So here's my thing really quick, going back to the Arizona-Gonzaga game that's in my head going to happen. Lauri Markkanen. He is also one of the best players, I think, in college basketball. He is a stud. He is a stud on Arizona. And that's why he's going to be a big presence to beat Xavier.
And that was another big thing in that game. They didn't go to him enough against
I think
the Gales.
that they need to go to him.
Yeah.
I mean, people can say it's true, but Markkanen is, heart and soul right there. I mean, the two of them are very helpful to have. But I think that Markkanen, he's going to have a great night against Xavier, and they're going to need every bit of him to be able to take on Gonzaga. But ultimately, Gonzaga does win over Arizona, but that's going to be a very, very close game. It's going to be like one of those games that we saw this past weekend that came right down to the wire.
You know what I would love to see from the Zags, and this is kind of me pulling out shades of my past. Could you imagine a Gonzaga-Arizona game where Arizona takes the lead and then Gonzaga has a 2005 Illinois Fighting Illini comeback to beat Arizona, and then Zona fans are sitting there going, why does this always happen to us in the Elite Eight? Why does this happen to us when we get to the Elite Eight? We just can't let it. It's just something that always happens. There you go. I won't get to say it before this weekend, so I'm going to kind of give you a little jab there, Arizona fans. But I'll ask you this, Brandon. Do you want to leave our Final Four of Florida Gonzaga and go over to the other side?
Yes.
Or do you want to pick our champ?
Go over to the other side.
So we're going to go over to the Midwest, and we've got Kansas, Purdue, Oregon, Michigan. I'm going to make this plain and simple. Michigan's going to beat Oregon. They're going to continue that hot roll. They are going to go to the Final Four because of it, because that's what happens. You beat Oregon, you go to the Final Four. Punch that ticket. On the other side, Kansas, they haven't had a tough opponent. They will in this one, and you know who's going to come up big for the Boilermakers? Caleb Swanigan almost had a triple-double against the Cyclones. I got Purdue, I got Michigan in the Elite Eight, and I got Michigan going on to the Final Four. What about you?
So I'll start with Oregon, Michigan as well. And Michigan played a great game against Louisville. Louisville, an outstanding program, and you have to give it to them. But again, you've been saying it kind of throughout this podcast, is that the ACC did not look good. They didn't perform well, and they didn't. And who has performed well? The Big Ten. The Big Ten has performed very well in this tournament, and they've played really well. And Michigan looked outstanding. They had guys coming up all over the floor. All over the floor. They were getting it done. And they were getting it done from the line. Oregon had a very tough game against Rhode Island. Rhode Island, they played very well against Creighton. They played very well against Oregon. Weren't able to get it done in the end. Oregon wins. But in this one, I don't think Oregon's going to win. And I have them as a Final Four team in my bracket that I created on CBSSports.com. I'm going to go against that right here just because of how well Michigan has played. They have done very, very, very well. And to Ricky's point, Michigan will be in the Final Four. I don't even have to pick the other game then, but I will. Kansas, Purdue. Purdue has made me look like a complete idiot because I picked Vermont to beat them because you know
the Catamounts were on a streak though. They were one of the hottest teams coming into the tournament.
And
they did. They had a fucking amazing win streak coming in
against such good teams. I'm sure.
Yeah, great teams.
Yeah,
amazing teams. Top caliber teams. Better than the WCC.
And then Purdue takes on Kansas, and Kansas has looked so good. I was able to watch the entire Kansas-Michigan State game yesterday. Wow. Josh Jackson, outstanding. This guy's a freshman. That's even more outstanding. And then you've got Frank Mason, the third, who is a stud, a baller. And the guys know just how to play. They take it to it. They drive it at you. And it's some good stuff. Kansas is not losing this game. Kansas is going to beat Purdue. Kansas will play Michigan. But sorry, Kansas. You out. Michigan wins.
So after three regions, we both picked Florida to come out of the East. We've both picked the Zags to come out of the West. And we've both picked the Wolverines to come out of the Midwest. Will the South prove the same? We've got UNC, Butler, UCLA, Kentucky. We'll start with you. Start with UNC Butler. Who do you got in that one?
This is going to be an interesting game. Butler's looked pretty good all season long, and they have been able to go up against some quality opponents, and they've beaten Villanova twice. So I think that Butler is ready for this game. Will North Carolina be? And North Carolina did not play well against who did they play? Arkansas. Yeah, they did not play well.
Arkansas, whatever you want to say.
Yes, that's why I was confused. I wasn't sure if they were playing Arkansas or Arkansas. But They did not play well. They did not look very, very good in that second half. They were outplayed. They were outplayed in the second half. And the reason why I picked North Carolina to win it all in my original bracket was because of their big four guys. And their big four guys just weren't getting it done. Joel Berry, you might as well have just sat his ass on the bench for the last 2 games because he has done squat diddly nothing. He needs to be better. He needs to be more efficient. And I think that he will be. But in these last 2 games, he has sucked so bad, and they've still won. If he comes on and plays well, they will definitely win. He plays well in game 3. They will beat Butler, but it'll be another close game.
Well, and how about the other one, UCLA and the Kentucky Wildcats?
This is a really good matchup. Kentucky has also played well, but Wichita State played really well against them. They just took it at Kentucky, and Kentucky at the end was able to say, we're going to be able to take you by 3. They did. UCLA looked really good last night against Cincinnati. This UCLA team has been one that's been impressive all season long. Kentucky has been one of those teams where Kentucky's had its inconsistencies this season, and I'm going to say because of that, UCLA is able to take them. And also because I think that the basketball gods out there want us to continue to talk about LeVar Ball. I just
not Lonzo Ball, LeVar Ball.
I think that's why. But UCLA will win, and then it'll be UCLA and North Carolina, and that's going to be a great matchup. And I'll let you know after you tell me your 2 teams.
Well, I've got the same 2 teams. I wanted to pick Butler, but I think UNC comes back after getting a few days off, plays a good game against Butler, gets the W. And Kentucky, to me, it's one of those things where I picked UCLA from the beginning to go to the Final Four. I am not going to go against that. They will beat Kentucky. It'll be UNC, it'll be UCLA, and UCLA will go on to play Michigan in the Final Four.
So the UCLA-North Carolina game will be a very good game. And I think that in this one, it can't just be Lonzo Ball. And it can't just be Leaf. Can't just be those 2 guys.
It's got to be more.
And I don't want to say that it has just been them, but they've been obviously the ones to shine. I think because North Carolina has has a flurry of talent, North Carolina is going to win, and North Carolina will go to the Final Four.
I'm going to actually call a Lonzo Ball last-second 3 to send the Bruins over the Tar Heels.
It's always something dramatic.
Yeah,
with you.
It's always something dramatic.
It's like a home run on the last pitch of the game. Down 2, but you have the bases loaded. It's something like that. It's always dramatic with you, and I love it, and I'm always expecting it.
And for the Final Four, because now we have our Final Four teams. If you paid attention to my bracket, my Ricky Widmer bracket, you know that you've been following along at home going, well, Ricky, you picked 3 of the same Final Four teams from your actual bracket. The only one that you had to pick a new one for was Villanova, who is now out. But my Final Four is going to be very simple as I'm typing in my final prediction for the final score in the championship. I got Florida, I got Gonzaga, I got the Zags moving on, I got Michigan, I got UCLA. Michigan, too hot, going to go to the championship, mainly because they beat Oregon, penciling them in. Then I got the Bulldogs, I got the Wolverines. Bulldogs going to end it. They will end the hot game. This will be a championship game for the ages, Brandon. We're going to be talking on one side, the Cinderella story of number 7 Michigan, this hot run that they have had so long, this kind of miracle tournament that started all the way back when their plane ran off the runway before the Big Ten tournament, coming on, playing that first game in warm-ups, in their warm-up jerseys and mix-matching jerseys, not even their real sneakers against Illinois, running through, winning the Big Ten, then going to the tournament, beating Oklahoma State, beating Louisville, then beating Oregon, beating Purdue or Kansas, whichever one. I don't care. I picked Purdue. That's why I said them. Then beating UCLA to go to the national championship. Then we've got the Zags. First ever Final Four. They beat Florida. Their first national championship appearance. And they are going to end the miraculous season, be the first Zags team to win the title 63-53 over the Wolverines. Pencil it in. Got it. Who do you got?
Yeah, pencil in because you're going to need that eraser. Obviously I've got Florida and Gonzaga. And Gonzaga has played Florida before. They played them this season. It was a close game, so they know how to play Florida. They've seen them. It's nothing new. Gonzaga will win that game closely, again, probably about 3 points. And then on the other side, Michigan and
UNC.
North Carolina. And North Carolina's just got too much talent and too much experience in this spot to lose. North Carolina, Gonzaga, the exact same championship that I've had in every single bracket all year long. And this is where it comes down to being tough. You've got what I think, again, is the most balanced team in the tournament in Gonzaga.
Best transition team in the tournament.
But then you have
basketball.
But then you have one of the most, I think, one of the most talented and clearly one of the most experienced teams in the tournament in this position. And it comes down to being very, very, very tight. And it's going to be who makes less mistakes in that championship game. North Carolina is going to be so hungry because they were there last year and they lost on a last-second shot that beat them. This year, they're not going to let it be a last-second shot because they're going to win by 7 points. North Carolina over Gonzaga, 80-73.
80-73. So you think it's not going to be a last-second shot that wins it?
Because I did say that, yes.
Wow. And I'm looking right now into my crystal ball to see if we could see, because the first thing I think of is, how many teams could we see? Because, like you said, Florida, Gonzaga have already met before. We could see none of those rematches. The only rematches that we could see for Gonzaga is if they play Arizona and they beat them earlier this season. Only thing is, they didn't have Alonzo Trier. The only other one would have been Iowa State, but Iowa State is out of the tournament. I want to ask you this to end this prediction segment, and it has to do with Arizona. What do you think the odds are that Arizona, if they get to the Final Four, let's say they get to the Final Four, that they win it all just because it's basically a home game for them? Since the Final Four and the national championship are at the Cardinal Stadium, University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Did you give any nod to them as like a favorite just because they're the home team?
No.
Not at all. So 0%, 0% that
they're not
going
to win it just because they're the home team.
Well, I'm not saying just because,
home team.
But it gives a little bit of an extra advantage. Fans don't have to travel that far. Basically becomes a home game for them.
At this point, I don't care who you're a fan of, what team you're a fan of that's in the Final Four. You're traveling. If you are a diehard fan, you don't care if the game is being played in Anchorage, Alaska. You are traveling. Doesn't matter.
Well, and the reason why I throw that out there is I wanted to end on this. The funny little nugget, and I'm not saying this is why Duke lost, but the funny little nugget I sent to you guys that Scott Phillips, who I follow, tweeted this out as he was at the Midwest games for the regional in the second round. He said, you know what? That game between Duke, South Carolina, originally supposed to be in Greensboro, which would have virtually been like a home game for Duke, but because of HB2, they switched it to Greensville, which is South Carolina. Virtually just because of that, it became a home game to a virtual road game because it's close to the South Carolina for Duke. Yet again, not saying that's why they lost. I just thought, I saw that tweet and I went, that's kind of funny that Duke basically went from a home game to a road game just because of HB2.
Yeah. I don't think it matters.
You don't think it matters at all? But
not a bit.
This is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think. Who's in your second chance Final Four and who do you got winning it all? Our second chance group is down below in the comment section.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.